Here we are, video number 2 for chapter 6, and as always, can't wait for it, here's my joke. So, I'm just wondering, did you guys hear about the guy who invented the knock-knock joke? Well, he won the Nobel Prize. So, don't know how to make sound effects on here, so I'll just do them myself. So, anyways, as always, take it all in, but now we'll get back to U.S. history. So we're going to start off today again talking about urbanization and a little bit about immigration. But first we're going to talk about something known as nativism. And I don't have the definition on the PowerPoint, but it's a good idea to add this in your notes. Nativism, what that is hostility towards immigrants from native-born citizens. So again, hostility, there's going to be a lot of it going on at the time period towards immigrants for a couple of different reasons, which we'll get to. But in the late 1800s, there was a lot of anti-immigrant feelings. Most of that was going to be focused on people who were from Asia, people who were Jewish, and people who were from Eastern Europe. And there's a lot of different reasons as to why there was this nativism or this anti-immigrant feeling. But probably the biggest one would be the work. Now, at this time period, and we've talked about this time and time again, you would probably not want to live and you would probably not want to work in a factory around this time period. And the reason is, it is very dangerous, which we'll get into a little bit more later. You do not make a lot of money. You don't get many benefits. But out of all of that, people who are coming over to the United States with the idea of the American dream, they could care less if they really had a tough work job, or tough work environment, or if they were not making a lot of money. So unions, they were probably the biggest people who were following this idea of nativism. Because if you had a company that or workers that would go on strike because they wanted, say, a 10% increase in their salary, here come immigrants who are coming in that will work for that very, very small wage. So immigrants, they're going to be very, very much trying to get these jobs, and people who are native borns are going to start to be fighting this a little bit more. So work is going to be one of the biggest reasons. There's also kind of a fear in politics that people coming over to the United States are going to start to take over, like the Protestant vote. There was a kind of big push for Catholics from Ireland. They thought that they were going to come and take over politics, but working was just really going to be that big issue. So because that the government is going to come in, and the government always has a law on immigration. So in 1882, they come up with one, passing a law that says that convicts, so if you have committed a crime, if you were a pauper, which means that you were very, very poor, or if you were mentally disabled, you were automatically barred from entering into the United States. So already at this time period, I don't know if it was necessarily nativism that was in charge of this, but people, they're being restricted about who is going to be allowed to enter the United States. And on top of that, to kind of help with that second one, the pauper, they put a 50-cent tax per head on each newcomer. So they did this again because they wanted people who were coming over that had a little bit of money. They didn't want people coming in who were poor, that they could pay this tax. It kind of helped pay for Ellis Island and Angel Island. But also, they're going to make sure that they have money. So if they don't have money, they don't have that 50 cents, they are not allowed to enter into the United States. And then lastly, I'll move it here so you can read the title. There's going to be a lot of restriction on Asian immigration. And again, this is in 1882. And Congress, they are basically, I don't know if you want to say forced to do this, but there is a lot of pressure to pass a law on Asian immigration. And this starts in California where a lot of people from Asia were coming in. But in 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act, what it does, it bars Chinese immigration for 10 years and prevents the Chinese already in the country from becoming citizens. This was, as I said, for 10 years. In 1892, it's renewed. In 1902, it is made permanent. This is not repealed until 1943. I mean, think about how long it is before they realize that this is a horrible law, and they are restricting people who are coming or wanting to come over and make a living and really help out. And there was a lot of people who had a lot of things that they could provide for the country, but because of pressure, they were told that they were not allowed to come in until 1943. And also with this law, children, they were forced into racially segregated schools. And again, this was mostly in California, and more specifically in the city of San Francisco. because there were so many people coming in who were immigrants in San Francisco, they said that people who were from Asian descent, they were forced to go to a separate school in the Chinatown district. Now, eventually, Teddy Roosevelt invites the San Francisco School Board to come in, and they make what they call the gentleman's agreement, because it really wasn't put into law that this segregation would end, but they forced, or they kind of hashed out a deal to make things a little bit better for the people who are immigrants in San Francisco. Now moving on to Section 2, Urbanization. And again, I don't have the definition on here, but it's a good idea if you don't know what it is already to add it. But urbanization, this is going to be the idea of people moving from rural environments into the cities. And every time I talk about urbanization, I always kind of ask this question. Why do people want to live in a bigger city? What are the perks? What are the benefits or the pros of it? And the number one reason that that students, you guys come up with is jobs. There are more jobs in a city than, say, in Beulah, North Dakota. There are more places to live. There are more things to do. There's just overall, there are a lot of different benefits of moving into a city. So Americans, they're going to start to migrate to the cities. And this is going to be, again, kind of with the idea of the Industrial Revolution, which we talked about last chapter. But most notably, it's just going to be American citizens that are doing this, and it's not going to be people who are coming into the country. So there's a little bit of a difference there. So immigrants, as I already talked about, with little money, they settled into the cities and they settled into their ethnic enclaves. Rural Americans, they're going to do the exact same thing. So whether or not they were farmers or not, they moved to the city because they had a better paying job. They had more opportunities. And that idea of this opportunities, I really should have highlighted this or bolded it, because this really sticks out here. More opportunities, more people are going to want to move to the cities. And with that, if you've ever been to a large city, and I'm not talking like Bismarck or Fargo, I'm talking like Minneapolis or Chicago, Los Angeles, New York cities, there is very, very limited space. So because of that, they are going to start to build up and not out. And if you have ever been to one of those large cities, you know what I mean. They are going to start to have skyscrapers. And these bullet points down here, I'll tell you, you don't need to write down this. It's just kind of a little bit of added information. New York City, they have more skyscrapers than any other city in the world. So instead of, here's New York here, instead of going up about this way because they can't really extend outwards, they're just going to start to go up. So New York City, they have more skyscrapers. Just because they have so many people that want to move to that area, they're going to start to build up. They also have elevated railroads, and they have the underground subway system. Both of those are going to be developed as a way to kind of, I guess I would say, save space, leave more room on the ground for people to start businesses, factories, whatever you want to call it. But that's going to be kind of the overall idea of urbanization, of people moving to the city, and we'll talk about some of the positives a little bit more and a little bit more negatives. But one thing that does come from this is you have a lot of separation by class. And what I mean by that, really there's going to be three different groups of people. You have the high society, middle class gentility, and you have the working class. So first to talk about the high society. They are super rich. They have multiple mansions. They have many servants. They have a luxurious lifestyle. And the one example I can always think of that I think you guys will relate to, if you've ever read the book or seen the movie The Great Gatsby. I mean, just that lifestyle of having so much money, you can build a castle right outside of New York City if you want to. You just have an overall very, very luxurious lifestyle. And one kind of story about how much money they had and how much they could spend, the average New Yorker had about $500 for a salary. There is a story of a person who was in the high society. They wanted to just, for fun, they wanted to throw a ball or throw a dance. They spent $360,000 on that dance. I mean, compare that to everyone who's making about $500, and this person's just thrown $360,000 for a dance. You can kind of see how there's going to be a big difference between high society and the working class. But in between that, you have the middle class gentility. Now, these are the people who, they own a larger home. Maybe there's one or more servants that work there, but they move out to the suburbs. Instead of living in New York City, they're going to move right outside of it. They do that because they don't want to be by the pollution. They don't want to be by the crime, some of those negatives there. So they move out into the suburbs because, again, you still have opportunities. There's still going to be grocery stores and movie theaters and stuff like that around. But land is going to be a little bit cheaper as well. So they move out there, travel back and forth to the city for work, whether it's through their cars or whether it's through the subway or elevated or railroad, but they're going to be what's known as the middle class gentility. And then the last one, you have the working class. These are going to be the people that make about that $500 that I've referenced to a couple of times. Now, they live in what's known as a tenement. Now, a tenement, this is going to be a very, very small apartment. And there are going to be several people that are going to be living there. And when I say several people, I should really say several families are going to be living in these small apartments as a way to save money. Now, both parents, they're going to work. Odds are kids at 10, 11, maybe even younger before that, they are going to go to work as well. And there's going to be very little money left over. And a lot of people don't really know about this working class at this time period. The high society or the middle class gentility, they kind of turn away. They don't want to actually claim they know what that life is like, but life in the working class was going to be very difficult. And to wrap it up, I'll show you a couple pictures. This is going to be an example of the high society. Looking at the woman here, you can see the fancy Kentucky Derby hat, the umbrella, I guess I would say here, the dress, and you can kind of see again the high society, just the ball, and how they're just spending all this money. I mean, this person's probably, their job is just to stand there, and they're probably making quite a bit of money for that. And then you have the working class and you have the tenement, who there's going to be several families living. You can kind of see into the door here. I'll show you some more pictures later about what the houses are going to be like. But overall, very, very different lifestyle.